Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave. Wish you a very happy and healthy start to your Wednesday morning over here from a very too hot fucking Helsinki, Finland, as I sweat off my asshole right now. Anyways, plenty to talk about on Bitcoin price action as we finally saw the short and medium term time frame range break. I think it was 2 days ago now, and I want to follow up on something that we're seeing on CMEs and also address something like the new meme in the market that's option. There's $1 billion in open interest in options expiring on Friday, so therefore XYZ is going to happen. Well, I have a lot to say about that actually as well. Anyways, more importantly, on to the actual topic at hand. We do see the Krown chain application is showing a continuation of the open interest reading that we saw from yesterday. Yesterday, we saw a break and a confirmed break of the 7.5 billion marker that was shown on open interest that has been really showing Bitcoin's range for the last month and a half, 2 months, ever since Bitcoin got back above that $9,000 marker, playing out that range in the open interest between 1.5 billion to 1.75 billion. Now Bitcoin breaking that range on the open interest while also simultaneously breaking the short-term and medium-term range on Bitcoin price action, which now seeing the open interest rise continuously with price action, it does bring up a rather interesting proposition here as so far so good, I'll put it, which at the end of the day still want to see a break of the high term time frame range. At the end of the day, price action trumps all, as we say, and the range for the higher term time frames has been more or less unchanged for the last 2 months, realistically speaking, between about 9,900 on a more aggressive estimate, 10,000 on a more conservative, and into the down, or denoting an upside breakout and continuation on a change of behavior for that price action as well, or a downside break of about probably 90-50 and rising over time now, correlated with another melting down of price action for multiple thousands of dollars, very very likely if we do break that region. Anyways, let's get into not just yet. Bitcoin dominance hanging at 64.5%, so we've actually seen it come down a little bit more. Very interesting, as we have been slightly, I guess we have, it pains me to say it, but we have been bullish on altcoins. Do have to call a spade for the last couple weeks here, although I'm not so confident. I'd look for that trend to continue if and when Bitcoin does break the long-term time frame range, whether it breaks to the upside or the downside. I believe that altcoins very likely, if history is anything to go off of, are likely going to dump versus the Bitcoin Satoshi pairing. Now, does that mean that they're going to dump versus the US dollar pairing? That's probably going to be more synonymous with whichever direction that Bitcoin chooses from here. So if Bitcoin moves to the upside, then we'll probably see altcoins rally versus dollar, but probably not as much as Bitcoin, and vice versa to the downside with losing versus the dollar, but also probably losing more versus the Bitcoin ratio. So usually altcoins going to get cream pie, boo cake sandwich style whenever Bitcoin does make a big massive move. And right now Bitcoin still consolidating as far as the triangular formation goes. Looking at the fear and greed index, Bitcoin ticking up to a 50, so we're quite literally neutral as Bitcoin does kind of suggest or get closer and closer to the topside resolution of this formation, but still not confirmed just yet. And again, confirmations or price action at the end of the day is the most important thing. And for all the other top end metrics, slowly rising over time. We can see a nice uptrend over the last week of price action there, and now it's time to go into the into the actual price action charts, and starting it off today with CMEs actually, because I think that CMEs is showing you something here that you're not seeing in spot markets right now. And we do see that a higher high has been made on CME as Bitcoin has taken out the not just the 27th of June high, but also the 26th as well, getting continuation off of this formation after retesting the broken resistance at 9600 region as support. So far so good, and realistically it looks to me like things probably want to test back up into the blue box territory right here. Does that mean that we're going to have a confirmed upside resolution of this formation at that point in time? No, still need to see a closure above at the very least 9940 on CMEs, 9900 on spot markets. But things are looking better here, especially as long as 9600 is defended on CMEs. Now, the same area for spot would actually be about 9550. Let me just confirm this. It's the same area that we spoke about yesterday. Yeah, somewhere right around here at about 9550-ish region, which is actually where the 4-hour 21 exponential moving average is kind of hanging out around right now too, which fair enough. If we actually do break back down below it, I would look for another tap back down into this liquid zone down here, which actually don't even really have marked off, but let's do that right now. We'll make a nice little zone between about 9250 and about 9200 even. Or actually, no, that's Yeah, 92.50 to 92.30 actually, somewhere down around here is where I'll be looking for if and when this area does get broken to the downside on no less than a 4-hour total closure. So I want to be very directly clear about that, because right now Bitcoin's actually looking a little bit droopy there on this time frame. And technically speaking, we do actually have potentially hidden bearish divergence in play here. We also have regular bearish divergence, or do we have regular bearish divergence? Maybe ever so slightly. We closed at 96.90 right here, closed 96.92, ever so slightly, yes. But looking for a big bad move just based off of that is not all that much. What is relevant though is a hidden bearish divergence between this point and this point. Not that point, but this point right here. As you can see, RSI making a significantly higher high, while price action makes a significantly lower high right here in the context of a general uptrend, as this is still an ascending triangle. And with that said, that typically does beget you a test back down to the bottom side of that time frame's range. At this point in time, if you are a Boolah, you're looking for, well, that essentially means 95.50 to get tested for you, which looks like we're kind of in the process of doing right now. If that area does break though, it would imply a test, like I said, at the very least back down to about 9400-ish region, tight margins here. That is only $150 delta right there. But personally speaking, I would actually be looking for a test back down here towards 9250-ish region, and we'll actually put in a nice little blue box territory right there, which will naturally meet up with our rising support trend line coming in from our last 3 lows, 1, 2, 3. At some point in time, although it would kind of imply that we'd be hanging around this region until early July, actually. So fair enough. It would likely get another bounce within this region first and foremost, and then we'd come back and reassess. But a break below this region right here, obviously going to be problematic for that time frame as well. But for right now, I give the nod to the Boolahs here, as Bitcoins will just closer to breaking to the top side of the greater formation. Again, at the end of the day, until we actually see a break of that formation, I don't really have any real calls to be made. I fucking hate that word to begin with. And now would now be a good time to be talking about all of the options talk that I see a lot going on right now on the good old crypto Twitter sphere. So okay, so yeah, I think right now would be a good time, just because, well, we got the short term out of the way. Okay, so there's a big thought bubble going around on crypto Twitter and crypto Reddit and crypto YouTube and all these great social media venues that has some legitimacy to it, but I think that it's getting grossly misinterpreted. People are saying that Deribit has about $1 billion in open interest expiring on Friday, this Friday, in Bitcoin options, which is true. And then on top of that, if you actually go into the data on Deribit itself and look at which strikes have the most open interest, it's like all of the far out of the money call strikes, well above the $10,000 strike, which is very interesting, right? Because that means that someone was either buying or selling. I mean, there's obviously a trader on both sides, right? Someone's taking one of those sides, not just going through the exchange. So what does that mean? That means that, or sorry, not what that means just yet. The interpretation that a lot of people are putting on this is that Bitcoin can't move until Friday's expiration. Not true at all, actually, because these are far out of the money options here, which are pretty much worthless at this point. I did a small perusal of Deribit options before this. Obviously, I don't trade there anymore. However, I would say that they are pretty much worthless at this point, meaning that if you or anyone that you know is an option trader, you already know this. Like, you already fucking know that this is just the wrong interpretation, because realistically, when options are that far out and this close to expiration, they're pretty much worthless. And so they're only risk on your sheets. And assuming that you sold them, even like a week ago, then most of the premium is already dissipated. So there's not really too much to be gained from holding it right now. In fact, it's all risk. And there's no real reason for any true professional to be holding those contracts, especially coming into 2 days before expiration, when they have maybe like $10, $20 left of premium in them, and you sold them for maybe like $80 to $100. Well, that's something to be considerate of, because a lot of people are putting this meaning on price action that Bitcoin can't do X, Y, and Z before Friday because of those options positions. No, the people who took those positions, what they've likely done is they've likely either taken spot positions against them to kind of cover them up, or they've already given up the position and locked in the profit of whatever, assuming that they sold those strikes. For the people who bought, well, you're fucked. So good luck with that, especially if you bought like the $30,000 strike call options expiring in 2 days. Yeah. we've all seen weird things. That would actually be a thing that I've not seen. That would be a little bit unforeseen in my experience. If Bitcoin were to like literally more than double, or no, sorry, it wouldn't double, but like what, go on a 50% rally from this price point? No, it'd be even more than that. A $15,000 rally essentially, or $20,000 rally between now and 2 days. So fair enough. You know, I'm happy to be proven wrong on that one. But my point is that a lot of people are making a mountain out of a molehill on this one, not understanding what options really are, and not understanding that there are contracts that can be bought and sold at any point in time. You don't have to hold these things till fucking expiration. So you're seeing a lot, or you're likely hearing a lot of interesting things with regards to that. And I just want to kind of be someone who I used to make my living as a market maker in options on New York Stock Exchange ARCA, and there's there's just so much disinformation around these sorts of things that is true on one sense, but is that how people actually use them in reality? Fuck no. Fuck no, man. Holding worthless options that are expiring in Tuesdays is a losing strategy. I mean, if they're not going to get blown out now as a trader, you will get blown out doing that kind of bullshit, over time for sure. I've seen it happen. One of my friends actually used to make his living by selling the wings on weekly expiring options. He had an experience that made him let go of that after seeing some very interesting earnings plays, which a whole nother topic at some point that we might talk about. Anyways, I realized that what the fuck's going on over here? Ah, okay, cool, nice. Another shitcoin asking me to talk about them on email. At some point in time, I need to go through my email and just show everyone here all of the incessant requests that I get, which this channel has like 44,000 subscribers. It's not that big compared to like an Ivan on Tech, compared to an Crypto, compared to a Moon, compared to all the big guys, Crypto Zombie as well. And I get hit up with these requests all the time for like maybe at most a couple $1,000s to talk about some sort of an altcoin. I've never said yes. In case if any one of these people is listening, I literally block you the second that I see anything like that. I'm not fucking interested. But I think it would be very enlightening for a lot of people to see what other YouTubers out there will sell themselves out for, like the price that they will. It would be quite enlightening, I think. Maybe there's some like legality things surrounding that, so maybe I should double think exposing that sort of information. But it would be really fucking fun to do nonetheless. Anyways, more on the topic of Bitcoin right on over here. Bitcoin coming down to 95.50ish region. Alrighty, so let's see how this test goes right now. Does Bitcoin actually shatter it or not? There's your test of the 21. Bad Bitcoin playing out that hidden bearish divergence. But let's see how it reacts here. I wouldn't call it a break just yet. We still got 22 minutes and 17 seconds left, so we might even be able to see this one together on this video. So looking at momentum oscillators from this region, we do see that 4-hour silks are headed down right now. They are kind of nosediving actually from a high level, and they will stay to the downside as long as Bitcoin's below essentially the 4-hour open at 96.50ish region. If we go down to a 3-hour, I'm curious if this one follows through as well. Yep, coming from the same area. And probably a lot of people think like, Krown, why the fuck do you look at basically the same time frame just to see like where the oscillators are? Because sometimes you'll get a very, very clear signal that they don't all agree with each other, which is usually very playable, which we might see here, we might not see here. But same thing on the 3-hour, coming down, will remain to the downside from even a higher price point than the 4-hour at 9,700. On the 2-hour, we see coming down to the 200 simple thus far. Coming down a little bit more aggressively here too, but that's to be expected. So everything's kind of in order for right now, and will remain to the downside as long as Bitcoin's below essentially 9,600. So actually kind of coming down a little bit more there. Interesting. Looking at the hourly, same thing too, as we do see 9,600 as that pivot point, and hourly Stokes are about to confirm a cross down in 21 minutes. So what I would say here is that if Bitcoin does break 95.50, yep, I would be looking for a move back down to the low side of the very short-term range. It's not a play that I'm really interested in making myself, but I do understand that some people out there like to play the micro time frames. Fair enough. If you're making money doing that, more power to you. I'm actually sincerely happy for you. Looking at this right here, is there any other obvious plays to be made? I'm trying to look for something resembling maybe hidden bullish divergence forming over here. Probably not. No, I don't see it at least. So fair enough. I'd still be waiting for that 4-hour closure, which is also going to be the 8-hour closure as well. And by the way, the 8-hour Stokes probably going to be turning down here soon. Yes, indeed they are, and will confirm a turn to the downside, a twist to the downside, better said, if Bitcoin closes this next 8-hour dildo below 97.28 region. So yeah, it is looking a little bit frothy here in the short term, but I wouldn't really put too much on it until we actually fully inform by close below that level and then get the next steps from it. But yes, if Bitcoin does break 95.50, I would look for a move at the very least down to 9,400, although that's not very helpful. Realistically, I'd be looking for a move down to about 92, maybe 92.50ish region overall. That's where I'd expect to see another expectations, terrible word, but I would look for a bounce within that region, and then we'll come back and reassess from there, as that doesn't really help like the long-term breakout or breakdown situation. Anyways, let's go back to the daily for now and kind of paint a little bit of a different picture here. So for right now, Bitcoin has just come back down and tested around the yellow 21 exponential moving average, which is fine. I really need to see where this one closes by end of day in order to make anything out of that. But as you can see from the reverse Stochastic indicator cross, it will be naturally angled to the upside pretty much as long as Bitcoin closes above 92.50ish region. So now we can make a correlation between the short-term timeframes and what I would consider like the upper echelon of a medium-term time frame as the daily goes. And so if you remember, the 92.50ish region correlates with the short-term time frame range to the downside. So if Bitcoin were to come back down there and more importantly close below there on any sort of a 4-hour dildo and especially a 12-hour or daily, we're not just going to see that range broken to the downside, but we're also going to see daily momentum switch back onto the downside. And this would be a very quick snake around, which is usually indicative that there's a lot more to come. And that would probably give Bitcoin enough juice to actually break below our current rising support trend line that is marking off the bias of this being an ascending triangle, which obviously does have a more statistical likelihood of breaking to the upside. And if that were to happen, we'd expect to see, maybe another small anemic bounce right here and then come back down below this trend line, which is now at current posturing, about 90.50ish region, slowly rising over time, and maybe another small bounce there on a lower term time frame. But overall, coming back down to test this trend line is not indicative of strength. It's not indicative of good things. While I do think that it would bounce here for a short move, realistically, it's a ticking time bomb at that point, because any sort of a closure on even a 4-hour at that point below 90.50, or especially a move, just not even a closure, but even just a move below the low on 14th of June at 8,900-ish region, it looks like, would constitute a confirmed breakout to the downside. And at that point, I really do start to target, a much lower price read on Bitcoin, at the very least a 7,500 overall, although there would be bounces along the way at 8,500 and 8,150 respectively. That's going to be the 200 exponential moving average on the daily, and then kind of around the 382 on the on this fib retracement right here. But the measure move would be pointed down towards 7,500. Nice historical area as well. As you can see, big accumulations going on in late 2019, and also big breakouts going on in a few months ago in 2020, more recently at that level as well. While I do think that this area could reverse things overall, because Bitcoin is so wound up here, getting ready for the next big move, I think that just playing out a $1,500 move from that price point, from that breakdown price point, is a little bit too not generous. I personally speaking, I think that things would likely come down to the 618 at about 6,900. Same sort of implications with this area as well. That area really must hold for the long term, though. If Bitcoin does start to break back down below this region, that's when I become macro bearish. Just like above 11,500, I become macro bullish. So let's also talk about the upside here, because realistically, Bitcoin's quite literally in the middle of this range of an ascending triangle, and it hasn't even broken the short-term range just yet, although it is hinting quite a bit here, maybe even some would say aggressively. But until it actually gets broken, I don't really see any real actionable things to be done, at least from my own behalf. So as long as Bitcoin's kind of holding above and closing above, more importantly, 95.50 on a 4-hour digital closure, I don't really have I don't really have any certain proclivities towards price action, but I'd just be generally bullish on the short term, looking for it to put in, some nice spikes, some nice time in this 95.50 to 9,600-ish region, and then flip back around after failing to break below 95.50 and test back under this blue box territory right here. That would very likely set it up for a very, 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 very healthy posturing to break out the top side of the blue box territory, which, again, same thing as the downside. Until I actually see a fully and formally closure above this region, at the the very least on a 4 hour above 9,900, preferably a 12-hour or daily, there's not really like a upside resolution to be had. If that does happen though, there is a measure move on this ascending triangle that points up all the way towards 11,100 actually, which would include and imply, more importantly, a breakout, or sorry, well, it would imply a breakout, obviously, but it would imply a higher high above our last weekly high in early February of this year, 2020, which if Bitcoin does do that, then we've done something that we haven't done in years, realistically, and put in a macro higher high. Well, not necessarily a macro higher high. That's still 11,500, but it would put in a long-term higher high on the weekly, which Bitcoin has been kind of struggling with for a while, as you can see right here. So if Bitcoin could get back above that level, there's really not too much stopping it, as you can see, just from like a weekly perspective, from 11,500. That is the macro area where Bitcoin's been getting rejected from ever since January 2018. Once right here, twice right here in March, then a fourth time in July a year later, then another time in August, a fifth time I believe, in about a month later from that. So if Bitcoin were to pop back up to that level in the more recent times, tested for a sixth time, well, the saying goes, or maybe not the saying, as I don't know if there's a saying that accompanies it, but the general knowledge goes that the more times that you test a support or resistance, the weaker that it does get, as the players defending it or supporting it, start to run out of their ammo, essentially, if you want to make a warlike reference. And so, I do think that it'd be very relevant to be leaning towards the upside if that were to happen. But of course, the first domino to fall would be at the very least closing a 4 hour or 12 hour or daily above the areas that we spoke about right here, the blue box territory of peace and prosperity or death and destruction, depending upon what happens within that region. So that's the first sort of domino to fall. If this area gets broken to the upside, I would look for a quick move back up here towards 10.3 to 10.4, probably a short-term pullback from that region, and then if Bitcoin gets a continuation drive above 10,500, in correlation with the upside implied move, bless you, then yes, I'd look for that extension to 11,500 with pullbacks along the way, very likely. But again, from a volume profile perspective, you can also see this as well. I mean, we don't need to go through this a million fucking times, even though I do, because why not? There's not too many other things to talk about, but you can see over here, major change of behavior above that level, just like even above 10,500 right here, there's a change of behavior in relationship to where we are right now. You can see that things just kind of fall off. On top of that, we also have one of the gaps present on CMEs from August, I believe it was. Yeah, August 2019 right here. So getting back above that level would be a change of behavior for the macro. More importantly, the first time that you see Bitcoin move into that region, I would look for a quick pullback as well. So just like to the downside to the upside, there would be counter moves along the way, as you'd imagine. When we're talking about a weekly time frame, we have to adopt a weekly time frame trajectory. So it takes probably a month. We're talking about months worth of price action realistically. So for right now, I still look at this as overall fine until those aforementioned areas are actually fully and formally broken, with warning signals coming down below 95.50 for the very short term, below 92.50 for the potentially long term. Actually, that's when things do start to look a little bit more dire. But for right now, especially apparent on CME chart, you can see a very obvious ascending triangle here, which statistically speaking, as we said, is more likely to break out to the upside. Doesn't mean that it's always going to do it, but statistically speaking, it will more often than not. Looking at the volume signature on this as well, does fit the bill for an ascending triangle and would imply a very likely resolution date somewhere around here, which is actually the 30th of June. Which, I mean, technically speaking, when these things become about 70% full, they become very, 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 very likely to break. I'd say that 75% full is like right around here. So maybe around the turn of the month, which I think is, let me look at my calendar for a second. That's actually in literally 1 week from today. So could it break before that? Yeah, absolutely. Could it break after that? Yeah, absolutely. But somewhere contained within this region, I'd say that, this greater formation is not infinitely, but significantly more likely to break. On top of that, we do have historical volatility percentile to look at as well, which is quite interesting here because this is just something that we've never seen before in the history of Bitcoin, where it stays this low for this long. It's either been at a 1 and at most a 2 read for about 2 weeks now since the 11th of June. We are now on the 23rd of June. Yeah, no, 24th of June. So yeah, almost 2 weeks now that we've been at this level, which there's been times in the past where it's been low for a while, but not for this long actually. So this is an outlier. Going back to September 2019, that's an example, a semi-comparative example, and let's just look at the results from it. It produced from top to bottom of the next bottom a 38.25% move to the downside. If you measure from the actual high of about 14,000, significantly more, obviously. If we go back a little bit further than that, again, not as aggressive as what we're looking at right now, but comparable in some ways after this 3-month contraction phase right here in early 2019, that precipitated a big bad move from 4,000 to very fast. What is this, 9,000, and then a few months later, 10 or 14,000. We're talking about 100% move, 200% move there. Before that, again, not as aggressive as what we're seeing right now, but pretty damning right here. We see a massive 50% drop off from 6,000 to 3,000 in late 2018. And then we don't really have examples until we go all the way back to like 2016 right here. And even then it's like, this is not necessarily the same, although very, very low volatility overall. It just suggests that we're going to see a pretty massive expansion phase. So whether we break to the upside or the downside, that's essentially why I'm saying this probably does correlate with macro levels. I would have a hard time seeing this just, peter out after like $1,000 or $2,000 move. I think that we're looking at a macro move here, very, 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 very likely accompanying the resolution of this range. And again, if I want to make this as simple as possible, not to say that people aren't capable of understanding more complicated things, just I like to keep things simple for my own trading behaviors. Anywhere below 8,900, bad. Anywhere above 10,000, good. I can kind of just boil it down to that right now, with specific nuances, as we stated at the beginning of this video. Let me just make sure that I'm recording. I am recording, and the microphone's working as well. So, or is it working? Actually, I don't know. Let's see. Okay, it is working. That's good. That's good to know when you're 26 minutes into a video. Let's see. What else do we have to look at while we're here? Let's go look at the 12-hour, of peace and prosperity as well. 12-hour Stokes, potentially looking for a cross down here as well. So this would be another good early warning signal that Bitcoin is in trouble if it does, especially if it does close below 95.50 here. Or sorry, no, take that back. I take that back. I take that back, Bitcoin. I'm sorry. It's 95.20 that the 12-hour has to close below in order to switch momentum to the downside here. That's when that would likely align with another test of the downside range. Do we have the same hidden bearish divergence present here? Yes, potentially we do, between 10th of June high right here and the high that Bitcoin is potentially putting in right here. But confirmations first and foremost before I'd look for that to play out, and that would likely be get a test down to the low side of the range, and then, well, time to get the bears their due diligence, and you'll probably hear me talk more favorably towards the bearish resolution of this formation if Bitcoin were to do that. But for right now, I still go with the Bulas here if I had to choose a side. But more importantly, I am looking for I'm looking for those levels to be met before really taking any real positions. I'm not really interested in trading the short term right now, just because you're probably going to get nuked at some point, regardless of which side that you're on. And I don't really, might miss like $500 of that move. That's fine when you're looking for multi-$1,000 worth of move. That's just my disposition. Looking at NASDAQ futures for the overall direction, playing out a pullback in and of its own self as well after making new all-time highs, as we said yesterday was likely, and looking good there. And funnily enough, I think that we actually have maybe some bearish divergence playing out on the 4-hour, although the daily still looks massively bullish. 4-hour is printing a head and shoulders on the RSI right here, which I don't like. And technically speaking, yeah, you do have bearish divergence, although that's very far away. So I don't know how much I trust that one. I'd probably be looking for NASDAQ to come back down and test around like 10,100-ish region, and then probably bounce from there. Daily still bullish to me. Daily momentum oscillators. This is what you expect to see during a bullish phase. That is overall good, although on Bitcoin that same sort of signature actually usually turns out bearish. Daily Jewel might be lining up for a sell signal, but it'd still take a few days for it to fully populate itself, but it is on the cards. So if things do reverse from here, that would be a damn good signal for that. And then the only way that I really get bearish for the short and medium term here is if we take out yesterday's low at 99.72 For right now, I just look at this as a pullback, probably testing around 10,100, and then continuation of the upside, coming into next month, something like that. Keep in mind the monthly is going to be closing relatively soon, and a monthly close anywhere above 10,050 is going to make me bullish for new all-time highs coming into July and probably August. This is still a phenomenal chart, absolutely amazing, and I don't have any major qualms with it. Again, as long as it's above those pivots that we just spoke about, basically 10,100 on a daily closing basis, or yesterday's spike low, are probably good enough for me. Looking at E-mini futures for SPY, looking a little bit more top heavy on this one, to be fair, probably coming back down and testing around 30.80, 30.60-ish region. I'd look for NAS to kind of show the direction. This chart's a little bit more difficult to read than NAS. Technically speaking, though, I'm sure that you probably have bearish divergence present in this one. Maybe ever so slightly. This one closed at 311.12. This one closed 311.16. No, sorry, it's not present. I apologize. And to me, this is more likely to look like a test of the golden cross. And as long as it's above the 10 simple, it really should not be getting bearish as far as like higher term timeframes go. But again, that's just my general disposition. Let's go look at gold. We said we were bullish on gold coming in this week and looking for new highs. What do we have? New highs, and I do think that this one continues to charge up to 1,800 plus. Still looking for like 1820-ish region. Then probably short-term pullback, but the way that this one is setting up for a close coming into the monthly, I still like that chart. It's still overall good. Probably more continuation to come. Speaking of monthlies, let's go look at Bitcoin's monthly. Monthly momentum will remain to the upside with any sort of a close above 89.50. Interesting region to choose, right? Because that is the last spike low that we have in this proverbial ascending triangle. So as long as Bitcoin is essentially above there, still has a chance here from a monthly momentum perspective, as monthly Stokes did just cross the upside, rejection of the bearish control zone, which I look at as overall good. Monthly Jewel is, while I don't trust the signal, to be honest with you. It hasn't had enough history. It hasn't had enough testing, but that would appear as a halted or long signal, and the monthly RSI is neutralish, but with a slight bullish twist as it's above the exponential, more or less. Not really worth talking about right now. What I do want to put the focus on is the accumulation distribution indicator, which is going to be all right, let's go right here. The accumulation distribution indicator, which is going to be getting another tick in about a week, as we just said. And if the next tick has a positive slope, I would still remain overall angled towards the bullish side on Bitcoin. I don't really see any real reason to be long-term bearish if that does happen. I mean, this is still, a retest, or sorry, I shouldn't say a retest, but still playing out the trend line that has gotten our last major lows since July 2015, which, by the way, that was this major low right here, connected with this major low right here in January 2019 at 3,100, and then once again hit this trend line more recently in May after that major dump down to about 4,400-ish region. So overall, I'd still keep an eye on that, but realistically, still got another week to go, so a lot of things can happen there. I imagine if Bitcoin comes back down below 8,900, that's gonna probably that's gonna put a damper on that, But for right now, still healthily above there by a good margin. Then again, we've all seen crazier things in a $600 move. Anyways, let's go check out Mr. Buteral. How is he holding up right here? Monthly looks good to me. As far as that goes, what about the daily? Daily looks like a short-term rejection, maybe coming back down all the way to like 238.5. I don't feel as strongly about Buteral's direction here, though. If it takes out yesterday's low at 241, that would likely be good for a continuation, another $3 lower. But I don't feel as confident on this one. I need to see a daily total closure above 249 to look for continuation here. Weekly still kind of getting stuck at the 200 exponential average, but this having such little history doesn't really make me all that confident in it, so I wouldn't really be using that right now. Daily is probably the highest time frame that you can go on this one, unfortunately. So it's just a lack of data, which is usually a problem in the good old cryptocurrency lands. Motherfucker. Anyways, looking at GBDC, let's see what GBDC is doing. GBDC looks good here. GBDC looks good for, likely for another, GBDC is not following Bitcoin precisely. That's interesting. Does look okay here though, especially if it opens anywhere above 1087 today, I'd be looking for continuation back up towards 11.5. But we're seeing bifurcation between GBTC and Bitcoin spot itself. We're also seeing different formations here as well, but there is a good amount of hidden bullish divergence present. So taking out yesterday's high would very likely be good enough for continuation back up to, not just 11.5, but 11.75 very likely. What else do we want to look at? What about Eurodollar? Eurodollar is interesting here as well. Really staunch at the 200 simple on the weekly. I'd be waiting for the monthly close on this one. As I've been saying, if the monthly close above 112, I'd look at that as potentially a reversal overall. If it closed below 112, I'd look for continuation of the downside overall. It's gonna be a long next week actually. Jesus Christ, man, so much to be aware of right now. What else do we want to look at? Is that about it? We're already 34 minutes into here. Maybe yes. All right, Bitcoin coming down hard now. We're about to close the 4 hour, and it's looking like we're getting ready for another move down to the low side of the range actually, with the way that it's kind of acting right now. Let's see, let's actually wait for this one 16 seconds and then kind of judge it after that. But maybe it plays out a very small bounce in like the 30-minute or something like this. But now it's looking like it wants to come back down and see what kind of liquidity is available at the lower levels, perhaps. So let's keep a quick eye on this one. But for right now, that 4 hour hidden bearish divergence playing out quite well, and probably has a little bit lower to go. Tough range here. Tough range. Can't really use 9,500 again, as doesn't really mean all that much for even the short term. Really, the only way that Bitcoin kind of regains its footing in the very short term is if it gets back above the little breakdown area that we saw probably on like an hourly at 9,650 more like. So yeah, fair enough. I don't really have too much to be made off of that. Let's go look at probabilities though. Okay, cool. So probabilities of, let's get the daily range, both to the upside and the downside. We'll do something like this, 9,900 and 9,250 to the downside is 9,250 is very relevant here. Downside probability of closing below 9,250 today is a little bit less than 21%. That is relatively high. That is reasonably likely to happen. Anything above 16% is actually pretty good. Anything above actually even 10% is like pretty good. By contrast, the upside resolution at 9,900 is actually higher at 96%. Curious what the 12-hour looks like. 12-hour going to show 19% versus 11%, and let's look at the slopes of these rings as well. Flat on the 12-hour, flat slightly down on the daily actually. So yeah, very interesting, very interesting here. I don't really have too much to be made off this though, unfortunately, just because, I mean, if you're looking at this right here, just Bitcoin put in some sort of divergence and pop back up, I feel like a fake out's coming. I feel like a fake out's coming, but again, I don't trade my feelings. My feelings are fucking worthless. Does Bitcoin play out a little bit of a range here? Am I wrong about 9,550 being relevant to this? It is so close to the 200 simple right here. It just makes it difficult, man. Just makes it fucking difficult. Technically speaking, yeah, probably should have waited for that. Maybe got a little bit too excited about using 9,550. Probably more like 9,500 even. Or sorry, 9,450 even. And then if that area breaks, would I look for a move back down here? Yeah, probably 9,250. These margins are so short. It's just not worth trading for myself. But if I did have something to say, you know what? Yeah, I'd like to standardize around the 2 hour 200 simple, if anything. As long as the 200 simple is being closed above on a 2 hour, am I looking for further continuation down here, or do I think that we'll bounce back up? I think that we'll bounce back up, to be quite honest with you. As we will potentially have some, no, we won't have hidden bullish divergence. Nope, that's wrong. So fair enough. I'd use that as a pivot, not 9,550, because 9,550 just doesn't. There's too much in this area right now that would even be actionable for myself. I want to be very deliberately clear. I'm not taking this trade. It's only the high term time frame range that I'll trade right now, just because things are so cooked up. But for what it's worth, that's what I'll be using right now. So again, as you can already see at the beginning of this video, probably have to move that down about $50 because, well, it's just not relevant to what we're looking at right now. I wouldn't really be seeing the same price action that you'd expect to see from that. Now 8 hour Stokes will cross down off of this. Yes. Yeah, the 8 hour does look quite droopy here. Fair enough, man. I'd give it a chance, though. I give it a chance. It's going to be a long, long day. 12 hour coming down to the 20. Yeah, it's difficult to be bearish when I do see the 12 hour just coming down to the 21. What about the daily? Daily came down to the 21 as well. I think that was very premature on my own behalf, so I'm probably wrong about that. If we do come back down and take out today's low, though, probably going to see that continuation of the low side of the range, though, 92.50-ish region. For right now, I think that was the wrong call on my own behalf. So I think that that's a good place for me to stop on off and say, well, you're already seeing me kind of revise my opinion right there. Again, this is why I just prefer not to trade a range like this. Too small, too close, and doesn't offer up enough edge for myself. And with that said, I'd like to wish you well. I'd like to wish you the best of the best and the happiest of the happiest. Take care, and until next time.